My parents refused to pay $10,000 to save my daughter's life, but spent $300,000 on my brother's lavish wedding. Meanwhile, my in-laws sold their house to save their granddaughter. 5 years later, my revenge left my parents with nothing. If you ever thought that family is a pillar of support, my story might make you reconsider. I too believed in family ties, but when my daughter needed help the most, my parents, the very people who should have supported me, chose parties and prestige. Now, after losing everything, they come back begging for my help, but I'm no longer the weak man I used to be. I'm Daniel, 32 years old, and I own a small interior design company in Austin, Texas. I'm not rich, but I'm not broke either. I earn enough to support my wife and my 8-year-old daughter, Lily. I work hard to maintain a stable life without luxuries, but without daily worries about making ends meet. My family isn't upper class, but my parents, Mark and Linda, have always wanted to appear as if they were. They run a well-known family furniture store. They're not rich, but they have enough. A spacious house, luxury cars, and parties every weekend with friends. For them, success isn't measured by happiness, but by how others perceive them. My younger brother Ryan is only 2 years younger than me. Since I was a child, I noticed the favoritism. If I got an A, my parents acted as if it was expected, but if Ryan got a B, they celebrated with a cake. When I went to college, they barely acknowledged it, but when it was Ryan's turn, they threw a huge farewell party, even though he was only studying at a local school. Growing up in that environment, I learned quickly that I couldn't depend on my family. I immersed myself in work, became independent, and built everything from scratch. I never expected anything from my parents, but even so, I couldn't imagine the day they would choose a party over their granddaughter's life. After graduating, I worked at a small interior design firm in Austin, starting as an assistant. The work wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. Every plan, every detail in a space gave me the satisfaction of creating something meaningful. 2 years later, with enough experience, I decided to start my own company. It wasn't big, but it allowed me to be independent and follow my passion. It was then that I met Emma. It was a sunny September afternoon. I was rearranging my small furniture store when she walked in looking for a reading chair. At first, I thought she was just another customer, but we ended up talking for an hour about books, music, dreams, and unfinished plans. A year later, we got married. Then came Lily, a girl full of life with bright eyes like Emma's. Emma and I believed that nothing could break our happiness. When Lily was born, we weren't rich, but we had enough. I ran my small company, and Emma was a preschool teacher. Life was busy but fulfilling. However, there was something we weren't careful enough about: health insurance. Back then, as a small business owner, I didn't have employer-provided insurance. Private plans were expensive, and since we were all healthy, we decided to postpone it until we were more financially stable, a decision I would regret for the rest of my life. Lily was always full of energy, but one winter night 5 years ago, when she was barely 3, I noticed something was wrong. She had a persistent cough. At first, Emma and I thought it was just a cold, but the cough didn't go away. After a few weeks, it got worse. She became fatigued, lost her appetite, had a low-grade fever, and sometimes stopped playing abruptly to catch her breath. One day, while Emma was playing with her in the living room, Lily collapsed. "Mommy, I'm very tired." Emma panicked, picked her up, and called me immediately. I ran to them and saw my daughter breathing rapidly, her eyes vacant. Without hesitation, I carried her to the car and drove straight to the emergency room. The doctor returned with the results of the CT scan. His expression was tense. "Daniel, we've discovered a congenital anomaly in Lily's lung. It's compressing her airways and she needs surgery immediately, before her condition worsens." The ground opened up beneath my feet. A tumor in the lung of a 3-year-old girl. How could this be happening to my daughter? But the biggest shock was yet to come. The doctor took me to the hospital's billing office, where they handed me a bill for $10,000. "We can proceed with the surgery immediately, but the hospital needs guarantees that you can cover the costs." Health insurance? I didn't have it. At that moment, I understood how terrible my mistake had been to postpone insurance, thinking we didn't need it. And now my daughter was paying the price. I squeezed Emma's hand, trying not to panic. "We'll find a way to get the money. Just save my daughter." But how was I going to raise $10,000 in such a short time? And then I thought of my parents. A small part of me still harbored hope. I didn't expect them to hug me and say, We'll take care of everything. But at least I hoped they would help somehow. Lily was their granddaughter. How could they stand idly by while their granddaughter was on the verge of life and death? I drove to my parents' house with a heavy heart. Upon entering, I realized they were busy organizing a party. The house was full of guests, live music, wine glasses gleaming in the hands of elegantly dressed people. The aroma of expensive perfumes mingled with that of gourmet food. It was a celebration for Ryan's upcoming wedding. While they celebrated, I was desperate, begging for my daughter's life. I approached my parents, trying to remain calm. "Mom, Dad, I need to talk to you. It's urgent." My mother frowned, gesturing for me to wait before returning to her conversation with the guests. I had to repeat myself, this time with a trembling voice. My father looked at me, annoyed at interrupting the party. "Daniel, can't it wait?" I gritted my teeth, struggling to control my anger. "Lily has a tumor in her lung. The doctors say she needs surgery immediately. If they don't operate, she might not survive." I paused, waiting for some sign of concern. They should be asking where she is, that she's in danger, what the doctor said. But there was nothing, not a single question about Lily's condition, not even a flicker of concern on their faces. I swallowed hard and continued. "The hospital requires a payment of $10,000 before proceeding. I've tried everything, but I can't raise that amount quickly. Can you help me? I don't need the full amount, just enough for them to operate on her immediately." I looked at them, hoping for a glimmer of hope. My mother put down her wine glass coldly. "Daniel, we've already planned Ryan's wedding. We can't cancel it or postpone it now." I blinked, unable to believe what I had just heard. My father crossed his arms, his voice as cold as an investor calculating profits. "We've already spent $300,000 on his wedding. If we give you that money now, the wedding can't take place." I stared at them, feeling a cold numbness spread through me. They had spent $300,000 on a lavish wedding for Ryan, but they couldn't give a single penny to save Lily. I turned to Ryan, my younger brother, whom I had always protected, helped, and supported. He was there, in a tailored suit and a glass of champagne, looking at me as if I were a nuisance. I abandoned my pride. I knelt right in the middle of the crowded party. "Ryan, please just help me with a part of it. I'll pay you back. But Lily will die without this money." I looked him in the eye, hoping there was some humanity left in him. But he stepped back as if I were a dirty beggar and laughed. "Do you think I'm going to cancel my wedding for this? I have responsibilities to my fiancé and the life I'm building. I'm sorry, but I can't help you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had knelt before my brother, and he had laughed in my face. Around me the guests murmured, some laughed, others shook their heads as if I were a poor fool putting on a show. My father put a hand on my shoulder, his voice icy. "Get up, Daniel. Stop embarrassing the family in front of our guests." I stood up slowly, but I was no longer their son. I looked at each of them before speaking, bitterness in my voice. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Ryan. Today I finally understood who my real family is, and who are just strangers." Then I turned and left without looking back. As I left the house, the sky opened and it began to rain. Heavy drops hit my face, but I remained frozen on the threshold, unable to feel anything but a crushing pain in my chest. I had pleaded, I had knelt, and in return, I only received cruel indifference. I ran to my car, slammed the door, and for the first time I collapsed and cried like a child. I didn't try to hold back anymore. I rested my head against the steering wheel, my sobs choking me. The storm outside mingled with the storm raging inside me. But then an image crossed my mind. Lily. She was waiting for me. She was fighting for every breath in that hospital room. I couldn't fall apart there. I took a deep breath, dried my tears, and stepped on the accelerator, heading straight back to the hospital. When I arrived, my in-laws were already there. They weren't rich, just hard-working middle-class people. But as soon as I walked in, my mother-in-law ran to me, taking my hands tightly, her eyes full of concern. "Daniel, why are you soaked? Did you talk to your parents? Will they help?" I couldn't answer, but she only needed to look into my eyes to understand. My father-in-law put a hand on my shoulder calmly. "It's okay. We'll solve it ourselves." We sat with Emma, determined to act immediately. The next day I began to sell everything I could. My beloved car was gone in an instant for $5,000. All our savings, $25,000, disappeared completely. I borrowed from friends and colleagues. The people from my company, many barely making ends meet, also came to help. A young employee who had only been with us for 6 months handed me $500. "Boss, I don't have much, but this is all I can give." A former colleague I hadn't spoken to in years called me and sent me $3,000. "I owe you a favor. It's time to return it." Every coin, every bill, every small contribution came together to save Lily. But it still wasn't enough. I sold my computer, my watch, and even our furniture. Our apartment emptied day by day, and yet we were still $40,000 short. Just when I was struggling to find the remaining $40,000, my in-laws called. "Daniel, how much more do you need?" My father-in-law's voice was firm, unwavering. I swallowed, reluctant to say the amount, but I had no other choice. "There's still $40,000 missing." Silence on the other end. Then my mother-in-law spoke, her voice unusually calm. "Okay, come for the money tomorrow." I was stunned. "Where are you going to get that much money?" My father-in-law let out a soft laugh, full of love but also determination. "We sold our house. As long as Lily recovers, it's worth it." I was frozen. They had sold their own house to save their granddaughter. My parents had turned their backs on their own blood, but my in-laws, with no blood ties to me, were willing to sacrifice everything for Lily. I couldn't hold back the tears. "I don't know what to say." My father-in-law smiled warmly. "As long as Lily is healthy, that's all that matters, son." With the money from my in-laws, I finally gathered the total amount. Lily's surgery was a success. When the doctor came out of the operating room and said, "The procedure went very well. She will recover gradually," I collapsed into a chair, burying my face in my hands, feeling a relief like never before. Emma cried. My mother-in-law hugged her tightly. My mother-in-law felt as if this had been her plan all along. I looked back at everything that had happened. Family isn't defined by blood. Family are those who are by your side in the darkest moments. From that day on, I swore I would never beg my biological parents for anything again, because I had already found my real family. After the storm, the sky cleared. Perhaps even fate was moved by the love of our family and stopped putting obstacles in our way. 2 weeks after the surgery, Lily was discharged. Every day she grew stronger, and every small step she took was full of life. That day, as I pushed her wheelchair out of the hospital, she looked at me with a radiant smile. "Daddy, I want to run and play again." I couldn't hold back the tears, but this time they were of joy. I hugged her tightly, feeling her heart beating strong and steady. I turned to Emma and met her loving gaze. We had been through hell, but we were starting a new chapter. However, a fire still burned inside me. I hadn't forgotten the day I knelt and was rejected. I hadn't forgotten the cold indifference of my parents. I hadn't forgotten Ryan's arrogant smile. They had scorned me. Now I would show them exactly what I was capable of. After Lily recovered, I immersed myself in work. I wasn't just working to live. I was working to give back to those who had believed in me. I was working to honor those who had helped me. I was working to prove that I didn't need anyone's charity. I would create my own destiny. I woke up at 5 a.m. every day, worked 16 hours a day, and strived to learn more than ever about management, investments, and business expansion. I no longer just did interior design. I started taking on bigger projects, hotels, shopping malls, office buildings. I never turned down an opportunity. Sleepless nights chasing deadlines, endless meetings with clients, high-risk negotiations. Every challenge fueled the fire that burned within me. And then everything started to change. A year after Lily was discharged, I got the biggest contract of my career. A $2 million interior design project for a major real estate corporation. 3 years later, my company had grown 5 times what it once was. What was once a small business with only a handful of employees was now one of the leading interior design firms in the region. My name started appearing in business magazines. From Zero to Millionaire, Daniel's Journey. The man who rebuilt his life after adversity. A success story written with tears. My parents, of course, read those articles. They saw me on television speaking at an entrepreneurial conference. But this time I was no longer Daniel, the son who needed their help. I was Daniel, the self-made entrepreneur who had built it all from the ashes. A year ago, I sat down for an interview with Forbes after my company was recognized as one of the 50 fastest-growing interior design firms. The journalist looked at me with curiosity and admiration. "Daniel, what drove you to achieve the success you have today?" I smiled, a smile that only I could fully understand. I once had a family that should have been my greatest support, but they turned their backs on me when I needed them most. I knelt before them, begging for help to save my daughter, and they told me they had already spent all their money on my brother's wedding. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you saying they chose to have a wedding instead of saving their own granddaughter's life?" I nodded. "That's exactly what I'm saying. And I want to thank them for their coldness and cruelty. They drove me to prove that I didn't need them. Thanks to them, I turned my anger into success. I didn't hide. I didn't speak in generalities. I called them by name. My parents, Mark and Linda. My brother, Ryan. Thank you for teaching me that family is not about blood, but about the people who are by your side when you need them most." The interview aired, and then the headlines exploded. Millionaire entrepreneur reveals how his family abandoned his dying daughter for a lavish wedding. Grandparents let their granddaughter suffer while throwing a luxury party. When money matters more than life, the chilling story of a heartless family. My story went viral. Millions were outraged. Social media flooded with comments. "I can't believe there are such soulless people. What kind of grandparents treat their granddaughter like trash? Ryan's wife must regret marrying a man who preferred to let his niece die rather than cancel a party." But the storm was just beginning for them. After the interview, my business partners cut ties with my parents.
Lifelong client canceled contract.
Business connections disappeared. The same people who once raised glasses with them at lavish parties now avoided them like the plague, because no one wants to work with monsters. My parents were expelled from the business world in which they once strutted. They had it all: money, status, connections. Now they had nothing left. Alone and ruined. And Ryan, he once thought he had everything. An extravagant wedding, a beautiful wife, a comfortable life. He used to look at me with pity, thinking I was a failure for kneeling before him. But now his world was falling apart. When his wife, Ava, read my interview, she was horrified. "Ryan, is this true?" He stammered, looking for excuses. But the truth is the truth. A few days later, Ava filed for divorce. She couldn't stay married to a man who let his niece suffer for a party. Ryan lost everything. A marriage built on cruelty was never going to last. And in the end, the ruthless were left only with themselves. Years ago, I had knelt before them, begging for help. They had laughed at me and told me I was worth no more than a party. But now it was the world that turned its back on them, and I felt no remorse. Success wasn't just sweet revenge against those who had turned their backs on me. It was also an opportunity to give back to the people who believed in me and were by my side in my darkest moments. I went back to my friends, colleagues, and employees, those who had given their last dollar to save Lily. I wanted to help them, to give them back 10 times what they had given me. I called them to my office, handing them thick envelopes with cash. To some, I even offered to pay their debts or invest in their dreams. But they refused. They just smiled, their eyes warm like the day they put their last savings in my hands. "Boss, you don't have to do this. You achieved something that not everyone can, overcoming everything. We helped you because we believed in you, not because we expected anything in return." I couldn't find the words to respond. I could only squeeze their hands tightly, grateful beyond words, because these were the people who had taught me what family really means. But there was something I couldn't let go. My in-laws had sold their house to save Lily, choosing to live in a rental. I couldn't let that sacrifice go unanswered. After Lily was discharged, I spent a whole year working to give them back what they had lost. Secretly, I tracked down the new owner of their old house. I negotiated, made offers, and finally bought it back. The day I handed them the keys, my mother-in-law was stunned, her eyes full of tears. "Daniel, how?" I smiled, putting a hand on her shoulder. "You gave me everything when I had nothing. This is the least I can do to repay you." My father-in-law was silent for a moment, then put a firm hand on my shoulder, his eyes full of pride. "I never doubted you, son. That night we had dinner together like a real family, something I hadn't felt in a long time." 5 years after Lily's hospitalization, as our family prepared to welcome a new member, I decided it was time for a change. I bought a bigger house not just for Emma, Lily, and our next baby, but also for my in-laws to live with us. They gave me a home when I had lost everything. Now I wanted them to have a life where they never had to worry about anything again. Lily was excited about having a little brother, but when I told her that her grandparents would be living with us, she jumped and hugged me tightly. "Daddy, will I be able to see Grandma and Grandpa every day?" I smiled, ruffling her hair. "That's right, honey. They'll always be here with you." Seeing Lily's radiant smile, I felt it deep in my heart. Everything had fallen back into place. I thought I'd never see my parents again, but unexpectedly, a month ago, while I was in my office reviewing contracts for a new project, my phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated for a moment but answered. "Daniel, it's Mom." That voice, the voice I hadn't heard in years. The voice of the woman who saw me desperately beg and turned her back. And now that same voice carried regret and supplication. "Can you help us?" I said nothing. She breathed shakily before continuing, her voice breaking. "We're in trouble. We mortgaged the house and the bank is about to foreclose. We need $200,000 to save it." $200,000. I remembered that day when I only needed $10,000 to save my daughter's life, and they chose a party over their granddaughter. I remembered the moment I knelt before them, begging for help, and they refused without hesitation. I remembered my father's cold stare, Ryan's arrogant smile, and their voices telling me that a wedding mattered more than a life. And now, when they needed me, they believed I would help them. I took a deep breath, keeping calm. "Mom, do you remember the day I went to beg for your help?" Silence. "That day I knelt before you and Dad. I told you that without the money Lily could die. Do you remember?" Her voice broke. "I remember. But you refused. You said that Ryan's wedding was more important. You let me leave without a second thought." She started to sob. "I know I was wrong. But please, Daniel, we really need you." I let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Let me ask you this, Mom. Between a party and your house, which is more important?" She remained silent. I continued. "That day, you chose a party instead of saving your granddaughter. And today, after losing everything, do you think I would choose to save you? But we are family, Daniel. Family helps each other." I laughed, but it was a bitter, empty laugh.
No, Mom.
My real family already helped me. It was my in-laws, my colleagues, even strangers who had more kindness than my own blood. She tried again, desperate. "You can't be so heartless. You can't let us lose everything." I spoke firmly. "Mom, I lost you the day you abandoned Lily and me." Then, without hesitation, I hung up. After putting Lily to bed that night, I sat in the living room and told Emma and my in-laws everything. I told them about my mother's call, how they were about to lose their house, and how I had refused to help without hesitation. I thought Emma would agree with me, but instead she looked at me for a long moment, then took my hand gently. "Daniel, I understand why you don't want to help them, but maybe you should think about it again." I frowned, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Emma, they abandoned our daughter when she was dying. I can't forget that." She squeezed my hand, her eyes still as soft as always. "I know, and I'm not saying you should forgive them. But do this, not for them but for yourself, so that someday you won't feel remorse or burdens within you." I turned to my in-laws, expecting them to be on my side. But my father-in-law shook his head and spoke calmly. "Son, we're not asking you to forgive them. But sometimes helping someone doesn't make you weak. It shows that you are stronger than them." My mother-in-law added softly, "Now you have everything. A loving family, a solid career, a bright future. And they have nothing left but despair. If you help them, you'll be the one who truly wins in the end." I didn't say anything, just nodded. I got up and went out to the balcony. I stayed silent for hours that night, looking at the dark sky, reliving every moment of that day. The day I begged them, the moment I knelt before Ryan, the way they turned away without hesitation. I had thought I would feel satisfied rejecting them, but strangely I felt nothing, just emptiness. The next day I called Mason, a close friend who worked in finance. "Mason, I need you to check something. Are my parents really about to lose their house? Or is it just another one of their tricks?" Mason didn't ask questions. "Give me 3 hours." 3 hours later I received an email from him. The information was confirmed. My parents were broke. The house had been mortgaged for $200,000. They would lose everything. I looked at the computer screen, feeling something indescribable. They once had everything: money, status, connections. But now they were on the verge of ruin, and I was the only person who could save them. I took a deep breath and dialed my mother's number. She answered immediately, her voice full of hope and despair. Daniel. I kept my voice firm. Mom, I'll help you, but on one condition. Anything, just tell me. You and Dad must come to my company in person. I'll give you the money directly. She was silent for a few seconds, then answered hurriedly. Okay. We'll go immediately. That afternoon I sat in my office. A black suitcase was neatly placed on my desk. Inside was $200,000 in cash. 20 stacks of $10,000 each, perfectly arranged. This money meant nothing to me now, but for them, it was their last chance to cling to the luxurious life they once adored. The door opened. My parents entered. They no longer had the same confidence and authority as before. My father looked haggard, my mother aged, with gray in her hair. They sat across from me, their eyes full of hope. I didn't say anything. I leaned forward and opened the suitcase, showing them the contents inside. 20 stacks of $100 bills gleamed under the office light. My mother gasped, her eyes wide. My father swallowed hard. I pushed the suitcase towards them. Here's $200,000. Enough to save your house. My father closed the suitcase immediately, clinging to it like a lifeline, nodding repeatedly. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. You finally understand how important family is. I let out a cold laugh.
No, Dad.
You're wrong. Family is important. It's just that this one isn't. Their faces tightened. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms, staring at them intently. Do you know why I'm giving you this money today? My mother shook her head. My father remained silent. It's not because I pity you. It's not because I want to reconnect. I paused, tapping my fingers lightly against the desk, my voice icy. I want you to understand one thing. This is the last time. From this moment on, you are no longer part of my life. The instant you leave this room, consider me dead. My mother burst into tears. My father clutched the suitcase tighter, his face pale. Daniel, don't do this. We're family. I smiled, repeating the same words they once said to me. You're smart, aren't you? You always know how to handle things. You can solve it on your own, can't you? My father pressed his lips together. My mother sobbed uncontrollably. But I felt nothing. I stood up, looked at them one last time, and then nodded to security. They can leave now. The guards opened the door, indicating for them to leave. They clung to the suitcase without a word. The door closed behind them, and I knew it was the last time we would exist in each other's lives. My parents left, clutching a suitcase with $200,000, but they left behind any relationship they had with me. I thought I would feel relief, but strangely I felt nothing.
No joy, no satisfaction, no anger.
Just an ending. But one thing I know for sure. This won't be the last time I hear from them. They've lost everything, and I'm still their only lifeline. I know they'll be back. Maybe in a year, maybe in 2. Maybe next time they'll say they need more money to survive. Maybe Ryan will call saying he's in serious trouble. Maybe they'll use tears, promises, and every trick they have to try and drag me back. But should I let that happen?